ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between.
He's your favorite Mexican-American Gemini from South Texas. It's Chibbi.
And he's a West Side bird with a badass hoodie collection. It's Rooster.
And this is Words and Shit,
the show where you get to know the person behind the poetry.
Brought to you by Write Art Out.
What up, Rooster?
What up, world? How are you? Salute.
Oh, yes, Rooster and the world. Rooster joining us this week because Rocky is on a well-deserved vacation. Little jealous, but still excited to have Rooster joining us this week.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. Happy National Poetry Month, friend.
Happy National Poetry Month, which also happens to fall during the same time as San Antonio Allergy Season Month. But only one of those is going to kick my ass this year. And it's not going to be National Poetry Month. Okay. I'm excited to kick it off. What are your plans for National Poetry Month?
Absolutely nothing. I refuse this year to do 30 for 30s. I'm going to have a couple shows. Obviously, you and I are doing a couple, some workshops, little light stuff. But I'm not going to kill myself this year. I don't know. Like, I just end up with like 30 poems or massive amounts of work that are just not hinged in any sort of way. And then I maybe get 1 or 2 or 3 out of them, which is great. But then I just kind of feel like I would have done better just napping. So
I can appreciate that. I just wrapped up a workshop that I was giving, wrapped it up last night. And, we were talking about National Poetry Month. And I was like, y'all, no pressure. A haiku counts. Okay. Yeah. If all you crank out is 17 syllables in one day, then God damn it, be proud of it.
Go right on ahead. And haiku. I mean, I guess it's National Poetry Month, and even just celebrating it is fantastic in my opinion for I don't want to call them non-poets, but the casual fan, because it sort of illuminates poets who maybe they didn't know about, or poems that may resonate them at this particular time in their lives. Who knows? So that's excellent. But then for poets themselves, it works in this sort of inspirational time of we get to celebrate ourselves. We get to like show love to each other, like way more than we already do. But we get to see what other poets are doing and be inspired, and to really love the time, the season that is us.
Yeah, and the 30 for 30 challenge to me, like I just see it as an exercise. I think in my 30 something years of life, I've completed it once. But it's just a nice little exercise and a way to kind of, like you were saying, like celebrate poetry in general, celebrate other poets and seeing what they come up with. And yeah, if I at the end of this month have one piece that I feel proud of, I consider that a success. Yeah. And finding new ways to just continue to like be inspired, right? Quick plug / shout out to Right About Now, who does a 30 for 30 kind of writing prompt thing every day. They're dropping 10 plus poetry prompts to help inspire poets to write something. You just have to be a supporter of theirs on Facebook. So shout out to that. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about is just to okay, so you got your MFA in creative writing. You've been in the weeds of the literary world, but I am only now exploring form, and I'm really excited about it and what form can do.
Yes,
and discovering new forms that just crack open. Sometimes it's like a puzzle to try and put them together, and sometimes the poem just naturally wants to be a form. Like I am really excited to get nerdy about poetry and form.
Yeah, you have been emailing me quite regularly with like new poems.
Rooster's like, stop emailing me.
All exercises in form, and I'm like, yeah, man, like go ahead. I do really love when people find form, because I feel like poets, any poet who is worth their salt, in my opinion, they tend to find form at one point in time in their careers. They tend to find a form that really speaks to them. Maybe sometimes it's just as simple as sonnets, and that's fantastic. But they're just like, oh my God, I'm gonna just write everything in sonnet form now. Or they tend to, haikus. And then even greater still, you have poets who then study form, learn a form, fall in love with a form, and then decide to completely like break form and like invent new ways. Like I really like, fingers crossed, maybe it'll never happen. Maybe it will. I'll put it out in the universe. I just want to create the San Antonio haiku that's like 21 syllables for Tim Duncan, but I doubt that's going to happen because it's like way too many syllables. But either way, I'm just putting that out in the universe. The San Antonio haiku, 21 syllables. Tim Duncan, we love you.
It's happening. And then the other thing is to like when you discover, because I think form has been pigeonholed a lot into at least what we've been taught, you know, European form of the West, right? And then when you start to discover different poetic forms that happen in other languages and in other cultures, it's just completely opens up what you can do when you take a form that it was made for a different language and then you put it into your own language. And our guest tonight has done that rather successfully. And super excited. I can't think of a better way to start a National Poetry Month than with our guest tonight, which is Josh Nguyen. Josh Nguyen is a bisexual Vietnamese-American writer, a collegiate National Poetry Slam champion, and a native Houstonian. He is the author of the chapbook American Lục Bát for My Mother, which just launched like 2 days ago, and has received fellowships from Kundiman, Tin House, Sundress Academy for the Arts, and the Vermont Studio Center. He's been published in a slew of presses and featured on both the Versus podcast and Tracy K. Smith's The Slowdown. He is a bubble tea connoisseur and works in a kitchen. His debut poetry collection, Come Clean, is forthcoming this fall from the University of Wisconsin Press and was the winner of the 2021 Felix Pollak Prize in Poetry. He is a PhD student at the University of Mississippi, where he has also received his MFA. He has more crew neck shirts than Trevor Noah has hoodies. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Nguyen.
Hey! Glad to have you on, Josh. How are you doing today?
I'm wearing my V-neck. You know, I have crew necks and V-necks, and today I felt very V-neck because of the weather, and I wanted to breathe more under like the lights and camera and the action. But before I start, I noticed that y'all were talking about San Antonio and Chibby's wearing the shirt. I don't want to start anything, but I do have a bunch of Rockets jerseys. You know, we have Steve Francis,
the franchise, love it.
We have Elijah one. We have more Elijah one.
I love it.
You have Yao Ming, of course.
Yeah, of course. We don't have the T-Max coming.
But I don't have a T-Mac. I can't get a T-Mac. But the last but not least, it's kind of sad right now to talk about, but James Harden.
Oh,
okay.
Actually, this is a good place to start with the Harden jersey, because what we like to, seriously, I swear to God, because we like to ask people who come on the show, how's your heart, friend? You are a friend. How is your heart? James Harden is balling in Brooklyn. How is your heart right now? How are you?
My heart. Well, my heart goes, I'm happy for James Harden. I think, he did give a bunch to the city of Houston. And I think he did carry a lot on his shoulders and in his beard. And he gave a lot of good memories and a lot of great people. A lot of people came together in our playoff runs. It hurt that he left to Brooklyn, but he had to do what he had to do, what he felt was right. Maybe he missed his best friend, Harden. Who knows? I'm not Harden. Kevin Durant. Who knows? Yeah, my heart for Harden is good and hearty. My heart right now, personally, and it's been a mix. Like there's been a lot of like heavy stuff going on against the anti-Asian American, the rise of anti-Asian violence in the nation, especially against Asian women. So that's happening. So I've been thinking about that a lot, but also been trying to balance with kind of going outside of, I usually write poetry, but I've been trying to branch out to short stories that I've been interested in, just because it's a great vehicle for my humor, I think. So right now I'm trying to balance keeping up with the news and having a heavy heart, but then also writing humor and short stories and kind of escaping into that narrative. So that's how my heart is right now. It's kind of trying to balance both and trying to still be an academic and be in a full course load. But and also thinking about books coming out, like the chapbook and the book in the fall. So trying to balance everything right now.
So it sounds like a little all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think a lot of us have been in the past. I mean, at the very least, the past year, if not much further than that, just trying to find some balance in the chaos of the world, but also celebrate, where we can and find joy where we can.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we're excited. We are joyful about this conversation that we're going to be having, and I'm really excited to hear the work in your chapbook. But before we dive into the actual work, we want the audience to get to know you a little bit better. You have some fans already. There's a lot of woohoo Josh, Viet love in the chat for you, Josh. We are V blessed, very much so. So it sounds like you got some fans already, but for people that are getting to know you for the first time, we're going to kick off with a segment called Speed Dating, and we're just going to ask you a series of questions.
I'm ready.
And you feel free to answer as concisely or as in-depth as you feel is necessary to justify your answer, okay? And you will be held accountable for your answers.
I'm ready. I wore the V-neck for the heat, so I'm ready.
All right. So first question. Only because it's National Poetry Month, we're on this. Your chapbook explores an entire form. What is your favorite poetry form?
Yikes. Wow. Off the bat. I think right now, I've been working on, I submitted a poem for workshop, and it's a broken sonnet crown. And the sonnet crown is like, it's like 15 sonnets.
Yes.
And like the last line of one sonnet goes on to the first line of the next sonnet, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So I did a broken one recently. I turned in just because I wanted to do almost like I did like a conversation between like two different personas, and it was kind of centered around like Hurricane Harvey and like salon workers in Asiatown in Houston. So just thinking about like the sonnet itself. I know it's like a very easy go-to answer, but think about the sonnet crown itself and how like when I think of sonnets, it's a very easy like way to think about like form as a container, and how like I feel like real quick, I write this out. I think about this all the time because I was a biochem major. So if you don't know, there's this formula, PV equals nRT. It's pressure volume equals moles rate times temperature or something. But basically, so the P and the V are inverse. So whenever your volume decreases, your pressure increases, and therefore your temperature increases. So when I think about the sonnet and how like small it is, I think about how that pressure is building because you have to contain it in such a small way. And therefore, when pressure increases, the temperature, the heat of the poem, the momentum can increase.
Absolutely.
The sonnet and how like that's like a good example of trying to create like more heat in a poem, like keeping it contained.
It is very apparent that we are dealing with a PhD candidate at the moment. This is that is both fulfilling and mind-blowing, and I am loving the nerdiness of it. And there is nothing easy about a sonnet crown. You like don't dismiss it.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. You already kind of talked about the Houston Rockets. You and I are both football fans. We even had a bet a long time ago on Twitter to do push-ups when the Spurs were Rockets. That was awesome. So my question is, do you have a favorite unsung Houston Rocket?
My gut says Shane Battier.
Yes.
Because like he was all about he was so intelligent. He would like study Kobe Bryant, RIP, as like a textbook. He would like study his opponent so well, and he was all about defense. I really love playing defense when I play. So like Shane Battier is a good one to think about. Also, I think honestly, like Gerald Green.
Yeah,
he's from Houston. And I think that he's been like traveling across the NBA a lot. And so when we had him in his hometown for a bit, it was great to see him play for the city that where he grew up in. And you could see the pride in his face, and like it was cool to see like the I-45 tattoo on his shoulder. So yeah, Shane Battier and Gerald Green.
Yeah, Shane Battier jerseys were like those jerseys that if you saw someone wear it, you knew they were a Houston Rocket fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, yo, that's a deep cut, but it's legit. I totally applause for that. I like that. That's a great answer.
I'm still processing the whole I-45 tattoo because, like, I-45 is the last thing I would celebrate. The last thing. But props to the person whose name you just said. Clearly not a basketball person. All right, next question. This is my favorite question because sometimes it's a very straightforward answer and sometimes it's complicated. What is your favorite dish?
Dish Network. No, I think my favorite dish is the network of dishes. No, I think it's funny. So Tuesday when the chapbook officially was on sale, I did a Twitter takeover at Bull City Press Twitter. And I did my favorite Vietnamese dish on Twitter, Thit Ca, which is like the opening poem as well for the chapbook. So Thit Ca is like my favorite Vietnamese dish. And I think I love it because one, it reminds me of like home and like my mom and grandma making it for me. But also like when I moved away, it was like the first thing I learned from my mother. And then, yeah, it was just like, it's such a cool recipe because it's all about the preparation. Like when we were making it, my girlfriend mentioned that like it's not even that hard to make. It's just like all the preparation beforehand. Like you have to like do the eggs and the marination and the peeling like the night before maybe. It's all about getting like everything ready for like the final execution. I love being prepared and I love like being organized. So I love that dish.
And isn't that poetry too? It's all in the preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah, get the line, then the line, you got a stanza. You got a poem.
All right.
I can already tell this is going to be a really nerdy hour. I'm so excited. Okay.
I know we already got the deep, Gerald Green cut. We got science. There's a trajectory to this that I'm already loving. So shout out to everyone watching because you are going to
solve quantum mechanics in this.
I love it.
The show.
Yes, and it's day 1 of National Poetry Month. We are going to nerd out.
Yeah.
Final question. I've seen you ever since you were like a kid in the poetry scene, and you've always been one of the nicest people I've ever met. Just always like nice, always friendly and stuff to get along with. So my question is, if you were a super villain, what kind of hideout would you have?
Hideout?
Yeah, what would your lair be like?
All right, so I'll tell you an alter ego of mine. So I was for a time, like 5 years, probably like undergrad, I was really into poker. And I even played like underground poker in like in Austin places.
Allegedly.
And I would study the books and I would like watch videos all night. I even like I was an RA and I taught my residents how to play, which is not allowed to do. You're not allowed to do. So I think my hideout would be like in a casino, probably.
So
and like, because casinos are very like hidden. They have very hidden rooms in general. So I could see myself like you would go to like go to Nugget in Lake Charles, and then go to like the casino floor, and you have to like roll a certain number on like the roulette table and open like a lever to open like the door in like another room. Probably a casino.
All right, I dig it. I like it. I love it a lot. All right, that concludes the speed dating round. We're learning so much already. I'm excited to see where this goes. To everyone who's watching, please show some love in the chat. Ask questions. We'll definitely try to get to them. But right now, we're gonna switch gears just a little bit, and we're gonna have Josh share some of his poetry with us. Josh, if you would please do us the honor. Thank you.
For sure. Thank y'all. Yeah, my chaplet that came out on Tuesday is called American Lục Bát from my mother. American Lục Bát is a form that I took from a traditional Vietnamese form called the Lục Bát. But that form in Vietnam, in Vietnamese language, is very specific to the language because Vietnamese is a monosyllabic language, so every word is one syllable. There's also like 7 different tones. So there's a bunch of tonal shifts. So I took that form with all its rules and I converted it for the English language. So I'll open with one of the American Lục Bats in the chapbook. It's called Store Overnight. Marinate means patience, means fish sauce soaking in between leftover pinto beans that the customer beams back in the kitchen with that lean, white mom Sunday brunch mean temper. It means, oh, come ye old tempura still in the back of the fridge. Come time, come soak, come slog, come wet, come brown, come all, come spice, come quicker, come rice. Come thick slice of enticing, come, my love, my joy, please come. When you're ready to come, please come. So we were just talking about my favorite Vietnamese dish, Thịt Kho. So it's only fitting that I read that poem. It's the opening poem of the chapbook. This is actually the oldest poem in the chapbook. I wrote this in like 2016. And I read it for the first time in 2017 at my first Kundiman retreat. If it wasn't for reading it at that retreat and getting like the affirmation and love there, this chapbook would not like exist. So shout out to Kundiman. Thịt Kho. Miles away, I forget to peel the eggs the night before. Miles away, I forget to buy the special brand of coconut juice. Miles away, my mother is laughing once I swallow my pride and call. It'll never be quite the same, she says. Just try your best and finish your food. When you buy fish sauce, you must remember to wrap it in newspaper. If the bottle breaks in the car, the stench will haunt you long after the car is compacted. She tells me that it's okay to cry because the eggs still aren't hard enough. I am blessed to have a mother who talks about death, who knows her mortality. I imagine my mother's passing. I know she won't have enough grandchildren. I will have added too much pepper and not enough oyster sauce. It's called simmering for a reason. The house smells of coconut. Braised pork and hot rice, rice cleaned thoroughly. Between the sounds of the blue flame lies an emulsified telephone cord. Our recipes will never be quite the same, but we both wear gloves to peel eggs. When I cook for my mother, I know she will lie. So this is another American Lục Bát in the chapbook. It's called Marinate Using Fish Sauce. If you don't know what fish sauce is, it's a very Asian, Vietnamese, like very pungent smelling sauce that you can use to marinate a lot of things in. It's like the staple ingredient for the Thịt Kho recipe. So marinate using fish sauce, American Lục Bát. When I open the brand new bottle, the new management burns down the door. You can't use that here. You have caught the next door neighbors in a hex. I see them bear witness through their nostrils. They're not used to this tingle, this tooth that wiggles above their tongues. They fall and dissolve. In the hall, they shout, kick, beg for mercy out to white angels who part the sky in half for rain to cry its cleanse onto July. To wash away the fresh fish sauce from my lips, let me hawk and spit vicious tang on my shit neighbors. I will sip one last gurgle and break the flask of Viet potion fast against the ground. Witness a hole burn the floor in the way I start to season a dish and their mouths will flay open. All right, so I'm gonna read some poems from actually the forthcoming, my forthcoming debut collection that comes out in October, Come Clean. I'm gonna read 2 poems from there. This first poem, since we're talking about form, this first poem was a mirror poem, and it's called Wisconsin Has a Place in My Heart. I Just Wanted to Let Go. Thomas tells me that trauma is trite, that to open up wounds is to bleed yourself out. Snow in Wisconsin blocks the front door of my cousin's house. In the north, the foyer has stairs up and down. The basement in broad daylight is a gray sky. A groaning fly by my ear. The only other noise besides the flinching of my arms, my cousin's breath, heavy on my neck. Heavy on my neck, my cousin's breath, the flinching of my arms, a fly by my ear. The only other noise besides the basement in broad daylight is the sky groaning gray. In the north, the foyer has stairs covered up and down in snow. Wisconsin blocks the front door of my cousin's house. It opens up wounds. Bleed yourself out, Thomas tells me. Trauma is trite. This next poem. So I think it was y'all's talk with John Sands and y'all geeking out about Pantoum. So I figured I would read the Pantoum from my collection. It's called In Praise of My Threaded Eyebrows. And it's after Amy Nezuko-Matado's poem In Praise of My Manicure. In praise of thread, doubled and twisted, a helix love affair between beauty and pain, tension of pulled skin, friction in the form of heat, praise the two hands which grasp my hair's execution. Not far behind beauty is pain, the tension of pulling rows of caterpillar legs from the dirt, using the hands of gravity's air to perfect execution, the monarch leaving its chrysalis behind. Farewell, caterpillars resting below the acne of my forehead. Hello, shiny sleek queens arch with a crown full of crystals. Behind the throne, a curtain made of nylon, yanked apart across my forehead. I fall in love with the yellow sleek queen trimming the hedge above my nose, curtailing made from neon. Yank a part of my body on the edge of the salon, stretched, trimmed, and hedged, and before I know it, there are parts of me that see again. The edge of the salon outstretches its arms, doubled, twisted, helix love of praise and thread. All right, so I'm gonna switch it up again because I was talking earlier about of the Chibbi and Rooster about like how I've been doing short stories to like kind of get my humor out there and kind of balance out like the heaviness of the world. So I'm gonna read a quick condensed version of a short story I'm working on. It's only one page. It's called Request Form for a New Ghost. Account number 0019849101. First question of the form. What issues are you having with your current ghost? Emma is fine. She does the usual ghost stuff like standing in the corner of my room when I wake up in the middle of the night. She understands that my bladder is the size of a 3-year-old. She doesn't hover too much over my body because she respects the boundaries we have set together. She reads the room well. She also is consistent in her spooky wardrobe, black and white Victorian clothing. I also think she takes care of my windowsill plants whenever I'm not in town, though I do think she overwaters them. My Goya plant always seems a little too firm when I get back. However, the other day, I went downstairs to grab a toaster strudel and I found Emma sitting on the floor with her upper torso sprawled out over the stairs, sobbing into her arms. The sobs she was producing sounded like a cat threesome under a pickup truck. This disturbed me. I have never heard her wail like this before. So I crouched down next to her and waited to see if she would open up. I pretended to caress her back even though my hand went right through her. Eventually, she looked up at me with her lifeless blue eyes and told me that she had been crying for the past hour because she looked at my Twitter profile and saw the Twitter argument that I was having with @Chief Kiefer Sutherland about the rise of violence against Asian Americans. She told me she couldn't believe that someone could be so ignorant with me and that she was so frustrated that she floated back and forth through the wall between the living room and the kitchen, trying to recount all the ways she might have been racist towards me or other Asian Americans. She kept moaning and yelling things like, I just feel so bad. I feel so bad. Am I a bad ghost? I don't understand. Emma even signed up for an online allyship workshop for other ghosts, which is cool and good intention, I guess. But now she stands next to the shower curtain while I'm inside and tells me everything that she learned about the plight against people of color in the US. Did you know about the coolies and the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act? She asked me recently. I said yes and continued getting soap out of my eye. Do you know about the gold rush? It's horrifying. Second question. If we were to assign a new ghost to haunt you, what preferences do you have? Ideally, I would want a ghost of color, Asian American or Asian to be specific. I know that Asian American ghosts are not as prominent, probably because of the model minority myth. I feel like an Asian American ghost would be able to connect with me on an ancestral level. They would be able to scare me way more efficiently. Instead of jump scares every time I turn a corner in my house or sloppy messages of blood on the wall behind my mirror, an Asian American ghost would just sit, legs crossed with their shoes still on, at the floor base of my bed and say nothing, just stare. And every once in a while, they would whisper things like, "You never rid yourself of the generational trauma passed down from your parents who fled during the Vietnam War," or "Your parents love your sister more because she's a doctor." I imagine some psychological Kubrick horror type stuff. I mean, I have nothing against Emma or other white ghosts from your company, but I think an Asian ghost would understand my sense of horror better. It's quite unexplainable. All right, so the last thing I will read is a poem from my chapbook again. I wrote this poem because there's a struggle I had about taking the traditional Vietnamese form and then adopting it for the English language, and whether, like, I don't know, I was really worried about like being like not like a race traitor, but just like ashamed for like trying to appropriate, you know, an old or the traditional Vietnamese form and, you know, try to convert it for the English language. And I really focused on this form in this chapbook because it was a way for me to bridge a connection between me and my family and me and the traditional literary history of Vietnam that I don't really know of, right? So there's a lot of personal reasons of why I delved into this form, and I do understand like the violence of calling it American Lục Bát, right? It's like the American in the form name itself is, you know, there's a lot of historical, you know, violences that come with that. So this is a poem that reckons with this struggle I have internally. It's called "A Failed American Lục Bát Responds." And thank you for listening to my set. How much of me must be written before I am just another bastardized item? My accents will soon leave the letters to float away across another ocean. Find them in Texas or Mississippi. Find them under outstretched tongues, broken down by enzymes, spit, and fast food. A form can starve to death, you know. If the libraries burn, who will think of me? How many queries until I find home? A Grecian urn devoid of my ashes, can I burn enough ink for you? Can I be read from fathers who don't speak, who find love in Vietnamese fantasy, in warriors trying to find their way home? Oh, monosyllabic birthplace, can I self-colonialize myself? Be the fusion the world doesn't want to see. It is written, therefore it exists in the third generation. The father's father, the author, and now me. In between self-hatred and self-actualization, I exist, so who will abandon me first? Who will shun me beneath the floorboards, you or myself? The author or the border? The home broken by war or the broken home by the bayou? Shake the soul out of me. Yellow secret blending in with all the carbon, suckle slurped, whispered, incensed by the head knee mourners. A mother will not ask what happened. Instead, she would take the white headband at my funeral and burn it with incense until the Holy Ghost cries shame. Thank you.
Yeah.
Applause, applause, clap.
Applause, applause, applause. The crowd goes wild, y'all. The crowd goes wild.
Thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many places we can go. I love how your work has this, quiet is not the word, controlled intensity. And I think it goes back to kind of like what you were saying earlier with the equation and then you know the science of it, right? Yeah. There's this very intentional, controlled intensity that I love about your work, both the way it's written and the way you speak it. So I definitely want to dive into the book. I want to dive into the nerdiness of it all, but I think we should start at the beginning. Okay. Yeah. Because like Rooster said earlier, you know, he's known you since you were a kid. Like literally, you grew up in poetry. All right.
I had bangs at one point, the Justin Bieber bangs.
I remember.
Justin Bieber, Josh Nguyen bangs. So you were on Metaphor Youth Slam in Houston. You went to Brave New Voices. Then you were at the University of Texas, the Spitshine team. Your team won at CUPSI. Like literally grew up in the poetry circuit, shall we say. But I heard that you were on track to become a dentist. So, you know, like, where did that switch, both the switch from dentistry to poetry, but also the switch from like slam to, you know, MFA PhD life? Like, where did that happen for you?
Yeah. So the longest time since middle school, I thought I was going to be a dentist, and it was a way because I thought, you know, it would be a good life, and I wanted to like make my family proud. And they even put pressure on me to be a dentist. I just knew that like they wanted me to be successful financially, right? So longest time I was going to be a dentist. I was ready for that. And then in middle school, I met Outspoken Bean and the Fluent One at the downtown Houston Public Library, and it was for like a youth. Actually, back before that, this all starts from my 9th grade English teacher, Miss Simmons, because she had a poetry unit, a poetry month, right? Probably in April.
Shout out to English teachers.
English teachers. So Miss Simmons did the poetry month, and she made a mock slam like in the auditorium of our high school. And she was like, if you participate in this, you'll get extra credit. So I did it. And then I got second place in it of a really bad poem. But then we learned that the first place poet plagiarized her poem. So really I won. And that's why I was sent to meet Bean and the Fluent One in the downtown Houston library. And that's how I got involved in Metaphor Houston. So yeah, for like high school, every summer I would do like the poetry workshops with Metaphor Houston and do the whole team thing and go to Brave New Voices or like a big youth slam. And then in college, I was like, okay, I still know people in Austin at UT who would still do spoken word with me. I'll join their team. I'll still be part of the Austin community. And I still thought it was just going to be like something that like I didn't put 100% of my focus on. Cause I didn't think I was good enough. But then during college and like falling asleep in biology class in the front row, I realized that maybe that like my passion isn't in dentistry. But I kept trying to do both. Honestly, I kept trying to hustle and do both. And then after my senior year, when I was studying for the DAT, I retook it. I was applying to dental schools, and I got in an interview at some school in the Northeast. And when I got that, I was like, when I got that email, like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not excited. And then I went to my favorite restaurant in the world, Waffle House. And I went,
we're going to revisit that, but
with my best friend, Tony. And he was like, I asked him like, what's something you learned in college? And he said, to not lie to yourself. And that was really big for me at 2 a.m. over a waffle. And I was also listening to this song called Because Dreaming Costs Money, My Dear by Mitski, who's a big influence in my book coming out in the fall. And the song is about like following your dream, though it might hurt your parents, your family.
Mm.
Those things were happening while I was thinking about my future. And I was just like, you know, Mitski and Tony and Waffle House, they're all right. Like, I should be following my passion. I just don't know where to start because I didn't have a liberal arts, you know, undergrad degree. So I didn't know what my next step would be. But then luckily, because of the spoken word community, my friend Julian, who was at CUPSI with me a lot, he was here at the University of Mississippi in the MFA program, and he kind of recruited me and told me all about it. And like this, in the MFA program is it's very small, and it feels like its own like spoken word scene, as like the small and closeness of it, the warmness of it. So yeah, and then I applied. I think I had a week to apply. So I drove to my friend Sanjay and Vivian's place in Dallas. I need to get away. I spent the whole like week just like applying, like filling out my letter and then my work sample, and then I got in. And then and now I've talked with enough people, and I learned from enough teachers and professors like the process of pursuing like writing full time, and I'm confident in it. And it's been like, you know, I feel like being a writer is just like buying time and hustling. I've always had part-time jobs. Like even now I still work part-time in the kitchen to pay for like submission fees, right? Yeah. As capitalistic as that is, that's my path that I chose for myself. So yeah, I think the transition was from dentistry to poetry was just figuring out like writing was my passion. And then from spoken word to like academia was just like, I've been booed before immediately. I've gotten like 2.7s for a poem. I can handle like learning things in like an academic setting. It's things I want to learn, honestly. Like I love most of these classes I'm taking. Yeah. I had a class today about Lucille Clifton. It was awesome. So
Here's the thing: you're in a PhD program now, so you're gonna be a doctor. How proud are your parents? Whoa!
Looped around to become the
still gonna be a doctor, you know. Like how's that PhD life treating you? How's your parents that wanted you to be a doctor, you know, feel about it? Like what is that like?
I think my parents are supportive, or at least indifferent. Either way, it's still very loving. Even if it's indifference, I know they still love me and they support. They're happy about my chapbook. My mother was really thrilled that Mother was on the cover.
Of course.
And they're excited about the book in the fall. So I think they're seeing the trickulations of like the patience coming to fruition. But yeah, PhD is wild because I finished the MFA last year, and that was 3 years, and it's my first year as a PhD, and I feel like there's a lot more pressure to know things and to talk in class, which is fine. But it's still like I feel like, plus since it's the same program, I just transferred into the PhD part. All the teachers know me, so there's a familiarity where I can kind of like gauge the cues of each professor and know what not to say or what to say. But I think there is like this, but I still think that like, because they're familiar with me, they know I should talk and like save the silence and stuff. But it's been cool because I mentioned that I didn't take a lot of English classes in undergrad. So honestly, like my first semester in my MFA here, I was like wrecked. I was so like sad because I wasn't used. I was adjusting to like the new town and like the new academic setting. Like one of my first classes at the end, I like had a breakdown. It was like intense, like imposter syndrome. Like, why am I here? Why am I here? I don't, you know, it's like I can't do this. But then I learned every day to wake up and just be like this is what you're destined to do, to write, and you have like you have like a privilege of learning things you want to learn. So every time like I go into a class, I know that there's a good chance I'm learning something new for the first time. And it might be old to someone else, but for me, it's new. So it's exciting. So I'm excited to learn, which is like, you know, I was falling asleep in like biology classes. So the fact that I'm just excited to learn is like what keeps me going whenever I get doubt from like the imposter syndrome, like deep in my head.
Because like, just to kind of keep going on this just a little bit, because I'm kind of curious. I wonder, and maybe you don't have the answer to it, but like not focusing on literature in your undergraduate study, like I could definitely see where that clash would happen in an MFA program, but at the same time, I could also see how that could potentially save you from burnout. Because like I know a lot of students who, when they're undergraduates, like they think they're hot shit, like it just happens. And it's interesting because like, you know, a lot of times undergraduate writers, they want to sound like the poets that they read, and a lot of them are canonical and it's all this kind of mess. And then they come into an MFA program and like you said, like they have a hard time with rejection. Like, what do you mean this isn't good? It's like, right. You're trying to sound like Wordsworth and he's been dead for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, so you came in with fresh, new, you know, like you said, outspoken being and fluent, who are brilliant, and like this kind of, I guess, newer take. So I guess by circumventing literature and poetry as an undergrad, do you think that maybe helped a little bit, or you know?
I think the science background helped me be very analytical when it came down to like analyzing poetry and trying to break it down and like it's like chemical components and such, like stoichiometry, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I also think that like I did feel. At first, I felt like, wow, what am I going to contribute to this class? But then knowing that everyone had that traditional most people had the traditional canonical like background, I knew that I was able to like bring a different take, honestly, just from being like probably a Vietnamese person too. But yeah, different take on like what this poem from like a dead white poet could mean to me, or what. And that was like, honestly, that's another like exercise that like has helped me through this program, is like how to find some benefit from canonical stuff I would never read. Like how can it benefit me, and like how can I extrapolate something from it? So if it teaches me to do something I don't want to do, that's like a benefit for me.
Right.
But yeah, spoken word, like the slam scene helped me with rejection a lot.
Because if there's one thing that happens a lot in the slam scene is you fucking lose.
So like to get like even, and it kind of translates to like submissions, like submitting to journals and stuff. Like I know a lot of my peers and friends from like not even my program but other programs or other places, like they're nervous about submitting to journals. They're nervous about putting their work out there. And I'm lucky enough to where I've been doing that with my whole body and voice.
On like a major level. Like Brave New Voices and CUPSI are no joke. Like, I mean, they're big. Like, you know, the crowds, the pressure, like, and then the talent. I mean, you just see so many other young writers that are like you who are just killing it. So like, I can totally relate to what you're saying in that sort of way, that it kind of demystifies the I don't know, like MFA programs have that sort of like almost like rigidness or coldness and stuff like that. And it's like, look, old white man, you can't like reject me anymore. It like hurts my feelings. Like,
right.
I'm
numb.
I was listening to an interview with Metamorphosis out of Baltimore, and she was talking about, you know, CUPSI versus Nats, and how like, there's a different level of intensity when it comes to like Brave New Voices and CUPSI, because everybody is there and is fucking there. Whereas like sometimes at Nats, there's some teams that are, I mean, they're there, you know, but you know, it's different, because especially with the youth, there's a lot of passion that goes into everything that they do. You know, like when you're young, you like throw your everything into it, and you're not going to do something if you don't believe in it, you know? So I think growing up in that poetry community is definitely a plus. I'm hella jealous of everybody that got a chance to grow up in that poetry community, because same with Rooster. Like we didn't find out about poetry, spoken word slam until much later in our lives. But whatever. Let's get it.
The cool thing is that
I have a question. Hold on. So keeping with this kind of, so you mentioned comedy and sort of and humor in your work, and it's kind of interesting, just because you don't know this, but you have written like arguably one of my favorite poems of all time, called "After I Was Mistaken for the Stripper While Delivering Barbecue in a White Party." which for reasons, like one, I love long titles, and what a title. Two, one of the best opening lines with "If I had a stripper name, it would be pork loin." Brilliant. And then
I'm still keeping that.
Yes, I'm happy to hear that. And then the interesting thing about humor, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, and I'm interested how it kind of translates from slam to academic writing and where you're at now in your process, because you mentioned even creative writing, where how humor kind of works to be accessible to the reader in a little bit in some ways and sort of disarm them, but at the same time you have this talent to just like get heavy and get deep and very sort of with a softness as well, but still like, you know, pressing these issues, because like that's a heavy poem. Like for those people who need to look that poem up, like we need to put it in the chat or something later, because it's by the end you're just like, oh my god, like this is no joke. But you have this way with it where it's awesome. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you on like why humor, why is it accessibility? Is it just something that you just feel more comfortable with? Like,
yeah, I think the humor in my poetry kind of reflects how I kind of live life, to where like I am so, even if I feel heavy or sad, like my kind of defense mechanism is to laugh it off. Like if something like, to ask any of my friends, if something like wild happens to me, I might just like laugh it off, but like I'm still like hurting. But I think like humor in poetry for me is like a way, it's a way to like break the ice, and it disarms the reader, right? It's like a way to kind of welcome the reader in before like slapping them with the waffle from Waffle House or something. Like it's a way to like not, I guess, trick the reader. Honestly.
Yeah.
but like, you know, when you watch stand-up comedy a lot right now, I feel like there's a lot of hybridity in like stand-up comedy sets of like comedy and like personal narrative and oral story. The way like you can disarm with laughter, and then that since you already disarmed the body and like the emotion, all your emotions kind of open up from the floodgates, so that later on, if you do need to cry about it, it might hit harder because you've already been disarmed. I think Fleabag does that a lot. Even Fleabag or the show Atlanta, like there's like so many funny jokes, and then it's mixed with like very sad, sometimes heavy moments that just hit really hard. And then you have like this very surreal, absurd feeling of like, I was just laughing, but now I'm crying. Like, what is this like mix of emotion? Oh, this is being human. I don't know. So yeah, definitely in like poetry, I use it as a way to disarm, or maybe I think I used to use it to hide behind stuff. I'm trying to get away from that now, like the hiding part of it.
I think it's too. It's an entry point, not just for the writer, but also for the audience, for the reader. You know, as a way to like allow the reader to be part of the journey. Whereas if you come out just swinging, you know, from the gate, then sometimes a reader immediately like just pushes off, right, and doesn't want to be part of this conversation. Versus if you kind of like draw them in a little bit, then they're like, oh, okay, let's see where this goes. And they're like, oh shit, I didn't expect it to go that. Oh fuck, I gotta go do some soul searching now.
It gets them invested in the poem in a way that like Chibbi said, if you just come hard out the gate, like not only is it just kind of like they may have like an aversion to it because it's heavy, but it could be triggering. And it's like, time out, you know, let me not listen to this and miss it. But I think that's something that you've done really well, and like specifically with that poem, because by the end I'm like, oh damn, like.
So everybody go look it up. Everybody go look it up. After I was mistaken for the stripper while delivering barbecue to an all-white bachelorette party. Okay, I think we might have a. Huh?
That's the offing journal.
Yes.
There you go. I think there might be a link to it somewhere. We're gonna look for it and drop it in
the website too. Yeah.
There you go. Let's get into the weeds about this new book. All right. Okay. So we were talking about form earlier, and there's multiple questions with this new book. There's a lot. Yeah, look at him looking all profesh on the back cover.
That is an author photo right there.
Yes.
Damn. That's the big, it's like you got that weird, like, do I got a shoulder problem? No, I'm looking cute.
It's also a V-neck.
I know. It's the trend of the V-necks.
It's your signature, okay? If I ever see you,
my brother.
there you go. If I ever see you reading at a poetry event or competing or lecturing at a university and you're not in a V-neck, we're gonna have problems. But so you talked a little bit about the form, right? The Lục Bát. There's a traditional Vietnamese form that you then converted, adopted. There's so many different words that we can use for this, and I think you were kind of touching on it, where like a lot of them feel wrong, but you adapted it. You were able to find a way to use that form with English, the English language. So one, can you, for anybody who doesn't know what a Lục Bát is, because I definitely did some research on it, it's brilliant. Can you explain what a Lục Bát is? And then two, what was that process like to morph this form to work for the English language, or to make the English language work for the form, whichever one it was?
Yeah, so the traditional Vietnamese Lục Bát, it was used for long like verse poems, and it's usually one stanza. And the thing is, so Vietnamese is a monosyllabic language, which is important because the rules of the Lục Bát are very, very strict, where it's 6 syllable line, 8 syllable line, 6 syllable line, 8 syllable line, and so forth. But then the 6 syllable line of the first line has to rhyme with the 6th syllable of the next 8th syllable line. And then that 8th syllable has to rhyme with the next 6th syllable of that 6th syllable line. And that 6th syllable of the 6th syllable line has to rhyme with the next 6th syllable. Yeah, so the internal rhyme in this poem keeps changing. It's not the same internal rhyme. And it's not easy, but like it's possible to do with Vietnamese, since everything is one syllable, right? You don't have to worry about like polysyllabic words like fuddling up the line. And also in the Vietnamese Lục Bát, there's a pattern with the tones, because Vietnamese is a tonal language, and there's 7 tones. The accent marks on the letters, and those have their own pattern within the Lục Bát too. So when I was like, okay, so here's this form, and it's in a language that's like mine, but not really, because I can't speak it that well. I'm not that confident in writing a Lục Bát in Vietnamese. And I was thinking about how like when I came to this form was when I was eating dinner with my parents at an Asian restaurant in Houston. And it was like the first time that I had a good, not good, but like it was a good thick conversation about literature that my parents kind of initiated, and like it was the form they grew up with. And I saw that like as a bridge to connect like between me and my family, and me and like this Vietnamese literature tradition that I don't know much of. So I basically just took the rules and adapted to the English language, where it's still 6 8 6 8, but and still the 6 syllable rhyme with the next 6 and the 8 and the 6. It's just you just use polysyllabic words. And there's no tones in the English alphabet, so that's out. And then another rule is that every time there's a line break, the rhyme pattern can start over. But the cool thing about adopting the form to English language is that because I'm using polysyllabic words, the internal rhymes are sometimes more subtle. And to flow and like not be too like spoon-fed with like the rhyme itself. So that was my process. It was and they're really hard to edit, since like if you change one line, it changes like the rest of the poem.
Yeah. And then most of the poems kind of are centered around the concept of like food and recipe, right? And it's interesting, this kind of concept of like recipe as ritual in a way. And I guess my question is, did you always appreciate like cooking food that was like cultural to you, or is it just something you've grown into as of late, or like?
I think I grew into it when I when I moved to Mississippi, because I knew that my mom couldn't cook for me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real talk.
Yeah. I don't go to Mexican restaurants outside of like San Antonio. Like fuck that.
Yeah.
Like,
And
I got
so and there's only like 3 or 4 Asian restaurants in Oxford, Mississippi. And but yeah, so the first thing I did was I asked my mom for the tit call recipe. And I think there's like I think in Asian American poetics, I think food can be seen as like a common way of like expressing like a connection with family or culture or customs. And because I think it's because like in a lot of Asian American households, like there is a lot of silence. But I think at the dinner table was when like silence is unbroken and like there's actually like a communication happening, even if it's through eating, and it's a way to show love. But I think for me, when I write about food now, I'm trying to like focus on the labor of it, especially working in a restaurant in the kitchen. Like I'm trying to remind people that like food is love, but it's also labor, and it's a lot of hard work, especially depending on like your socioeconomic status and like what kind of food you're making. Like it's a lot of preparation, right? We're talking about that. So I think for me, so one of the reasons why I used the Lục Bát in this chapbook in particular is that like the traditional Lục Bats was used for like narratives about a warrior like trying to find the way home, for example. There's always like a journey to kind of go home. And so the form itself for me was like the food is a way to remind myself of home, try to get to some home, even if I'm far away. So I thought that content fit well with the traditional themes of the Lục Bát.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of like food is ritual, food is a concept of home, food is labor. It's especially nowadays where it's like, can we find like some sense of normalcy, of grounding in something? I think cooking is one of those aspects of life that just kind of like centers you, right? Where it's like, it's just you and the ingredients and the fire and like just make something of it. Whereas you can push everything else that's happening out of your life to just kind of like focus on the cooking, you know, and the food. And then you have that instant, quote unquote instant, depending on how long the food takes to make, gratification of like the finished product, you know, like here it is. And now you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, as it were. So I love that.
And there's like that pressure if like I work in a kitchen, so there's definitely pressure there to be fast and efficient, but there's also the pressure just like cooking for someone else, not like labor of love, and like what that pressure can do to someone. You can fail or you can succeed.
Yeah.
So the book kind of is described as a bridge between the East and the West, while still questioning kind of like U.S. imperialism and assimilation and all of that. And while it's kind of our duty as writers, you know, and also as hyphenated individuals to act as a bridge, do you ever get tired of just being a bridge?
Yeah, the thing about bridge is that you're always getting walked over, right?
Right.
But no, I think I've thought about it more with this chapbook in particular, because I remember when I was talking with my friends of like I don't want non-Vietnamese people to not like it, I guess, because it's like too like foreign or something. But I also didn't want to let down like Asian people and Vietnamese people. So so I think being a bridge for me just means that there's like usually two like ethnic bodies that I'm trying to not disappoint, which is like sometimes I'm like, nah, like I'm not trying to write this for you, right? The audio, like that idea of like who your audience is. And then there's the other side of me that's like, I want everyone to love me. I want everyone to like my writing. So yeah, I think being a bridge can be tiring. And I think it could be fruitful when like, I mean, when I figured out like how to bring this form for the English language, I was like, oh, this is a connection. This is like a building block for something. And yeah, just in general, like in my regular life, I think I'm very aware of my hyphenness being Asian in America, especially like right now in these times. And I think being in like Oxford, when there's not a lot of Asian people, I'm definitely aware of it. So I think it's like this thing, that mix of like hyper visibility and hyper invisibility, and when to stick out, and when to like kind of be silent and like hidden, and like balancing out when to do which, or whether to get rid of either of those ideas. And yeah,
No,
bridging.
Yeah, bridges. Yeah, I mean, like I can definitely relate as a Mexican American individual, and like I guess it's interesting, especially. I guess my question is now, because of like the rise of anti-Asian like sentiments and hate crimes that have been atrocious and happening. Like, does it make the work that you're creating now and sort of being this bridge, like I don't know, more? Give it a greater responsibility, like now that it's out in the world? Like, is there more that you wanted to do? Because I do know that you also recently were like selling copies and then donating to causes and stuff like that, which was awesome. Shout out to you for that. Like, I don't know, what is your feeling towards that as an artist, and like, this is what I can contribute?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think whenever like stuff like this happens, and if it's like my particular, like if I can see myself in the news when it says like Asian or Asian American, I always find myself wondering, what can I do in my position? And there are so many other great like people and activists and writers who say amazing things. I just kind of retweet them because I have no idea how to articulate what I'm feeling, which might just mean I just need to do more work on that. But I do think that like I always try to look at the pragmatics of things, and like, so I think, yeah, financially, because of how we live, I think money is important, especially when like tragedies happen. So yeah, like 2 weeks ago, I said like, if you buy the copy straight from me, I would donate all the proceeds to like 2 orgs to help the victims of the families in the Atlanta shooting. So that was like a way of like trying to shed light on the situation and somehow like physically help, like whatever, physically help the scenario at hand, and to like try to not be at peace, but try to like be okay with what I can do to help. And sometimes like sometimes you have to be quiet and let others speak, and sometimes just like retweet their stuff. And if that's the case, then you try to figure out, the more pragmatic things to contribute. So I think when I write now, I think my write poems now, when I read these poems, I think I'm very aware of like how it might have more intensity or more meaning because more people are thinking about Asian Americanness, I guess. And if that's the case, then I am like carefully like, crafting, I guess, like my set lists and stuff, and knowing like which like audiences may like be like opposed to certain poems. I'm always like thinking about that stuff, and I think I'm thinking about it more now. Better or worse.
Yeah, for sure. Again, props to you for doing what you did in terms of like donating the proceeds of people like buying directly from you. If people still want to get copies, it's obviously available on Bull City Press. Do you still have copies that you're selling for anyone that's listening?
I do still have copies. If you want a signed copy, you can DM me at my social media or my website, and then just give me your shipping address, and you can just Venmo me $5, and then the proceeds will go to the 2 orgs in Atlanta.
There you go. Well, let's talk about now your upcoming book. Come Clean won the Felix Pollak Prize in Poetry. So first of all, congrats on that. And secondly, what has that experience been like, winning a full manuscript poetry prize?
It's been wild. I think I was doing the math. I was doing the math of like winning it. I did like this math here of like the percentage of me winning the actual prize. And it was like I had a 0.21 chance or something. I was like, what? But I think there's a lot of things that like they don't tell you that you have to worry about. Like I learned a hard lesson about permissions. Actually, you know, like you can use an epigraph or lines of poetry, and usually if it's like one or two from someone, it's fine. But I learned, because like I said, Mitski is a big influence on my first book. I learned that like if you use song lyrics, that's like you have to get they'll like highly advise you to get permissions. And I had a whole cento, which used like other people's lines. I had a whole cento poem based off of Mitski lyrics or Mitski song titles. And then I had to like ask permission for like 13 song titles, and they were like, "This is X amount of dollars." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then
we're cutting that off.
Like, I can't do that until anymore. But that I ended up using some of the book prize money to buy at least one song. And the cool thing is that once you buy rights to a song, you can use the lyrics any way you can. So I could use like I have like 20 poems of just those lyrics.
That's the next chapbook, Mitski.
But it's kind of cool because like I'm a big fan of Mitski, so it's kind of cool to support her in this way, like own like the rights to a song. It's kind of like owning stock in like GameStop or something.
We'll tweet at Mitski and just be like, "Yo, give my man give him the clearance. Yo, he's writing poems.
Give him carte blanche. He's spreading the Mitski word."
That's right. Come on.
I forgot which outro it was in whatever rap album, but it was like it was an ad lib of the like, "Oh, did the sample clear? Did the sample cleared or something?" I forgot if that was Chance or not. But that's how I felt. I felt like I was trying to clear samples for a rap song.
Oh yeah. My question about Come Clean coming out in October, y'all need to go get it. What's some of the differences you've seen in like this manuscript versus the chapbook, like in terms of theme or in terms of just how you feel about it?
I think for the chapbook, I knew that the American Lục Bát for my mother had to be in this like little chapbook format, because when I wrote the American Lục Bát, I knew that like it was for a very specific like theme, right? Because most of the American Lục Bát are steps of a recipe, and the recipe is for tit call. So it's all like this is almost a big recipe poem, big recipe book. But I knew that I didn't want to make a whole book of it, and I knew that for the forthcoming book, I knew that it was going to be way more experimental and way more heavy. So I knew that like it had to be a completely separate thing, and because it's heavy, and I had to flesh out a lot of the concepts for the book, and that's why like the poems in that book are meant to be a full length. But yeah, I think writing Come Clean, that was my MFA thesis. So I was lucky to have a great thesis committee, and they helped me a lot with the poems. I'm really proud of it because I think it shows a lot of like y'all were saying, like the subtle control I have in my writing. And I think that the concept of come clean, which is heavily based off like this idea of like, one, come clean, like tell the truth, come clean, like actually cleaning. There's a lot of like themes of like organization and like neatness and tidiness in the book. And so there are poems where like it's very controlled and very like sleek, but then there's poems where like it gets messy. I'm very excited to show both like the neat side and the messy side, in terms of like visual lines on the space and in terms of just like emotion and like themes.
I love that. So super excited for when that comes out in October. Yes. Right, from the University of Wisconsin. Let me check my notes here. University of Wisconsin Press. Big congratulations to you on that one, and can't wait to read that, as well as get a hand on your chapbook. I just have one more question, and this is serious. Okay. Now we already
fingers ready.
On the subject of recipes, we already kind of like excluded an entire state from claiming this. So maybe just in the city of Houston, where is the best place to get crawfish? Because I have my favorites. I lived there for a while, but I want to know your favorites.
Here's the thing. Everyone, because of like Netflix shows and stuff, everyone goes to crawfish and noodles, which is fine. Crawfish noodles is great. It has its purpose. It's kind of expensive, in my opinion, not as flavorful. But my place to go to, or my family and friends like to go to, is in the Hong Kong City Market. It's in the mall. It's called Crawfish Cafe. And it's like right in the random, like dark shrouded corner of the Hong Kong City Mall on Bel Air Boulevard.
I love it.
And it's way cheaper. It has like 5 different like spice flavors you can put in the bag. Put corn in it, put sausage in it. And they have amazing like spiced Cajun fries or something.
Because before we went live tonight, we already decided that Viet Cajun crawfish is way better than traditional Southern crawfish. I'm sorry. Facts are facts, America. Facts are facts. Okay.
When I came to Mississippi, there was a crawfish boil for free in my apartment complex. And I got there and I was like, there's like nothing. It's like it's like rubber. There's nothing on this crawfish.
There's no garlic. Where's the garlic?
No garlic. Yeah, there's no flavor.
There you go.
I love going on Mississippi and be like, Viet crawfish is better. Texas crawfish is better.
I will. Next time I'm in Houston, I'm gonna have to look that up. Up until then, I think 88 Boiling was kind of my favorite place. Similar area over on that side of Bel Air, but
is that the one with the wild parking lot?
Yes, the parking lot that makes no sense. You're like, where's the entrance? Yes, first time I rolled up on that place, I was like, what? Well, any hoozle. I think that's a fantastic place to end this conversation. I'm like feeling homey. I want to go to Houston all of a sudden. We're gonna have crawfish in the near future. But it is crawfish season. It's National Poetry Month. It's crawfish season. I feel a poem coming. And not a crawfish poem, a poem by you. So if you could do us the favor of just closing us out with one more poem, that would be fantastic.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It was great talking with y'all and great to show a little Spurs Rockets rivalry at the beginning and to nerd out on poetry. And like, it was great to show my formula. But yeah, thank you all for listening. Everyone tuning in. I will read this poem. I think just because we were talking about it and it makes sense. And it's after I was mistaken for the stripper while delivering barbecue to an all-white bachelorette party. Also in my forthcoming book, Come Clean. 1. If I had a stripper name, it would be Pork Loins. Marinated in my mother's seasoning, I am mostly bone, but my butt is meaty. My neck is long, but you can still love me if you want a brisket. In the eventual end, it will be my own doing. If I had a dollar bill for every human who wanted to see me naked, I would still be paying loans back. Being wanted was never simmered. I am the lamb's wool and the wolf crying beneath thin skin. Licked between my ribs in rich blandness, I am best served with oyster sauce. 2. And there I stood, a bag of meat, head in the crosshairs, unknown terrain, door closing behind, young deer in the trenches, stay motionless. Don't make the first move, kindled fire, feet too warm, apple between the teeth, arrow pointed to the navel, knives and forks and stomachs, lack of fat, sucked bones, upside down, blood draining, unconsciousness. Serpent at my throat, boiling rice, serpent in my throat, not clean, serpent down my throat. 3. Is this what being a sacrifice smells like? 26 jewel-studded cowboy boots circle me, tongues glistening in the spur of heat. Thank you.
Applause, 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 applause. And I am both mortified and hungry.
Me too.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for joining us here for this past hour, Josh. It's been a fantastic conversation. Your work is phenomenal. I know we have it displayed on screen for everybody to see, but for anybody that's listening to the podcast after this live, can you please tell people like where they can find you, where they can find your work, all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, so my social media is the same, Twitter and Instagram. It's Joshua Nguyen 03. My Venmo Cash App is the same, Joshua Nguyen 03. You can find my publications, and you can find a link to buy my chapbook on my website at joshua-nguyen.com. And if you want a signed copy, you can DM me on Instagram or Twitter, and I'll get your shipping address and I'll send you a signed copy.
Love it. Love it. Rooster, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. Greatly appreciate it. I'll just say personally, I've really just been lucky and fortunate to see you just over the years just develop. And it's like Texas, we rep for each other. H-Town, y'all the bomb. So salute to you. Much appreciated for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. And also, I want to say earlier, we talked about community. I'm glad that like y'all are still like part of my life, in my like literary life, and it's great to know that when I come home to Texas, I know that y'all will be there, and I can always like count on y'all to like still keep the love of poetry alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm appreciative to y'all.
And there's a lot of love for you in the comments coming through, so well deserved. Josh Nguyen, everybody.
Thank you, Josh.
Oh, Rooster.
Yes, sir.
We've officially kicked off National Poetry Month.
I feel good. I'm glad that I was able to be here to help with that. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Wow. Like I said, it's so just personally for me, like as someone who is good friends with Outspoken Bean and Deep and Fluent One, you know, individuals who are great at cultivating the Houston youth poetry slam scene, as someone who's worked with young poets here in San Antonio, and just, you know, this as someone who has ran a poetry venue, we see so many people come in and then just go, and, you know, brilliant people who just life happens, they go on their own way, and Josh was always just one of those fixtures where it's just like, oh, you know, Josh is here, cool, and like, you know, hearing praise about, oh, Josh is dope, I'm like, okay, cool, and watching him, and so just to see the growth and maturation of his craft is just, I'm lucky. So
yeah. That's actually, you know, still a synonym with that word is what I was thinking. Just fortunate to be able to see this kind of like growth and trajectory for people that started in the youth poetry scene. Fortunate that the youth poetry scene even became a thing, because like we talked about it earlier. We're like, you and me, like I didn't find out about spoken word or slam or anything like that until I was in college, like much later, and you know. Kids these days, like you and I do a lot of work with, you know, with youth and in the middle schools and high schools and whatnot. Like kids these days are really fortunate to be able to have that kind of like exposure, be able to see themselves, be able to hear their stories outside of what is traditionally taught in academic. And clearly the result of that kind of influence is amazing writers like Josh and other people that kind of came up in the youth circuit that are now sharing their voices. And to much accolade, much well-deserved accolade. So yes, lucky, fortunate, blessed, and highly favored. Absolutely. So let's thank some people and get on out of here. So thank you so much to the audience who has stuck around tonight. Thank you for all the comments that you threw at us and at Josh. This show is live for a reason, because we believe that you need to be part of this conversation. So thank you for being part of that conversation. And thank you to our production crew, Dominique in the background, taking care of all the technical stuff, and Chris Conde for producing our theme music.
Absolutely. And then don't forget to follow us on IG and Twitter at Words and Shh. You can also watch past episodes on YouTube. If you find us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. That really helps us out. And on wherever podcasts you look for, we're there too. So
we out there. So go back and look at some get some past episodes. Josh even mentioned our conversation with John Sands that happened a few weeks ago. Like, it's out there. And next week we have the one, the only, none other than Asia Sampson is coming through in the Words and Shit studio. We're super excited. One of the most booked spoken word artists in this country is coming through, and we're going to be talking about I'm sure we're going to be talking about like being a touring performing artist in COVID for one, and then just talking about his amazing work. So
absolutely. So thank you to the audience. Thank you so much, Chibbi, for letting me fill in. Maybe I'll be back some other time whenever you need a vacation.
Whenever I need a vacation, right? Rocky should be back next week, highly rested and ready to go. Until then, you all stay safe out there. Thank you so much.